The White House maintains the posture: if you wait long enough, any controversy will eventually blow over. But the acute dysfunction at the top of the world's most powerful military doesn't seem to be going away, because it's actually getting worse. Today, Politico is reporting that Pete Hegseth, quote, surrounded himself with advisors who quickly turned into vicious rivals for power, whose bitter brawl has now unraveled into revenge power plays, surprise firings, accusations of leaking, and embarrassing headlines that are blowing up the Pentagon, distracting from Trump's agenda, and possibly jeopardizing Hegseth's job. Now, the Defense Department is notoriously nonpartisan, avoids deviating from decorum, so an eruption of infighting is only making Hegseth's stain on the Pentagon worse. Quote, there is a complete meltdown in the building, and this is really reflecting on the Secretary's leadership, said a person familiar with the matter. Pete Hegseth has surrounded himself with some people who don't have his interests at heart. Joining me now is one of the reporters of that story, Paul McCleary, who covers the Pentagon for Politico. Paul, I got to say, this is a very illuminating piece. Thank you for your and your colleagues' reporting. Let me just start by one of the ways that you framed this that was useful for me was there was some notion when this person who didn't have a traditional resume for this job was confirmed, he would be surrounded by people with a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of experience at the top. And yet it seems he kind of brought in his people at the top, and that's been part of the problem.
Yeah, a few of the Dan Caldwell is one of the top advisors, and Darren Stone. Like I'd worked with Hegseth a little bit in the private sector when Hegseth was working with veterans organizations, right? So he knew them previous to this, and he brought him with him to the Pentagon. They both had some Pentagon experience, but not normally as much as people in those roles would have. They're both veterans, so they'd both been in the military. They both had served. And then Joe Casper, his chief of staff, worked on the Hill for a long time. He had, again, a little bit of Pentagon experience, but none of these guys were really in the building for years and years and years and built those relationships as these top advisors normally do, or else they're former senior officers many times and things like that. So it's a group that had come in who are not, newbies to Washington, but pretty new to the building and pretty new to this sort of organization. I mean, it's a massive global organization, right? Millions of people in uniform, about 800,000 civilian employees around the world, and it's a big job to manage all these fiefdoms, as well as being a diplomat when you go overseas. So this is a brand new thing, and especially it makes it difficult when people who hadn't really been there before, and Hegseth, who had never, he was in the Army, he retired as a major from the Guard years ago, but he had never done anything even close to this size or scale.
The other thing that was clarifying about your piece is that the rivalries here, I mean, clearly these people, 3 people have been marched out of the building. The chief of staff, Casper, has been relocated. There's tons of leaks that reflect incredibly poorly on Pete Hegseth. He had a makeup studio installed at the Pentagon. Today, we just got reporting that he had Signal installed on his computer at DOD, which I guess would make it easier to copy and paste, but also seems like maybe not a great idea. Obviously, these guys all kind of hate each other now, but one of the things that came through in your piece was there's not some ideological stakes here. Like, this is purely personal pettiness at this point where they all kind of hate each other.
Yeah, I mean, it boils down to a personality clash. It's not like there's this kind of neocon versus MAGA feud or something like that. They're all pretty much on the same page. Dan Caldwell, he tweeted over the weekend with the other 2 advisors who were fired. They released a statement saying they fully support President Trump's agenda. They fully support what he wants to do internationally and with the military, but they just clashed with Casper. And, the leak accusations are what really sunk the ship here, right? I mean, I think Hegseth was told that these guys were all leaking. And they leaked, the story that came out of Elon Musk coming to the Pentagon to get Chinese war plans and other things like that. And they all claim it's not true, that they did not leak these stories. And there was an investigation launched, and they said that they were not given polygraphs, which some defense officials had claimed that they were, and that there's no evidence against them, and they were marched out of the building because of this personality clash.
One of the pieces of reporting is just that Joe Casper, who was the chief of staff, had a meeting where he started the meeting by telling people about his bowel movement, that there was another instance in which he recounted, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like a trip to a strip club. Is that what you've reported?
That is what we had been told by multiple sources, yes. And I think it's been corroborated by other news organizations as well, both of those stories.
This is the chief of staff for the Secretary of Defense.
Yes. Yeah, he liked to shake things up, I guess is a polite way to put it, in meetings. He also had a habit of calling senior military officials, officers in the military, by a lower rank to their face on purpose, just to gauge their response. So he wasn't a very popular guy in the building, I think, toward the end there. And it was part of the personality clash between all four men.
The embattled Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth seen leaving the White House for a visit that was not on the official schedule today. Comes as Hegseth is under increasing fire for sharing military plans in a Signal group chat. This is a second Signal group chat. And this group included a lot of personal people, including his brother and his wife. His wife is not an employee of the Defense Department, nor is his brother. And tonight, CNN is learning more about his wife, Jennifer Hegseth. She is a former Fox producer who is constantly by Hegseth's side and has even requested a security clearance for herself. Brian Todd is out front.
She's not formally employed at the Pentagon, and it's unclear whether she has a security clearance, though a source tells CNN she's applied for one. A Pentagon spokesperson said the department does not discuss security clearances for any individual. But tonight, Jennifer Hegseth is firmly entrenched in her husband's inner circle and in his controversy. Jennifer Hegseth was in a recent second Signal group chat in which her husband, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, shared sensitive information about U.S. military operations against the Houthi rebels. Pete Hegseth didn't refute the reporting that he'd shared information on a Signal chat with his wife, but did say this to Fox News.
What was shared over Signal, then and now, however you characterize it, was informal, unclassified coordinations for media coordination and other things.
Jennifer Hegseth met her husband when they both worked at Fox News. Each has 3 children from previous marriages, and they have 1 child together. Jennifer Hegseth has been perpetually by her husband's side since his confirmation process earlier this year. She often went with him to his meetings with senators on Capitol Hill. And a Senate aide tells CNN there was particular frustration among female senators that Jennifer Hegseth was there because they were looking to ask Pete Hegseth about allegations against him of sexual assault, which he has denied. Jennifer Hegseth's presence at those meetings, quote, totally changed the dynamic of the conversations about the assault allegations, the aide said.
Really put a damper on those senators' ability to actually ask the most sensitive questions and to get a real flavor for what he was all about, whether he was being truthful or whether he was, trying to hide something.
Multiple sources tell CNN Pete Hegseth has grown increasingly paranoid about potential leaks to the media within the Pentagon and has begun depending on a smaller circle for counsel, including his wife.
It was Jesus and Jenny.
A U.S. official tells CNN Jennifer Hegseth shares her husband's distrust of many media outlets, besides Fox. Jennifer Hegseth has also attended at least one official meeting with her husband at the Pentagon in March with Britain's defense secretary. Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson tells CNN that Jennifer Hegseth, quote, exited the meeting before any sensitive and classified discussions occurred. Still, one watchdog says her mere presence at that meeting could send concerning signals.
If foreign leaders can't count on our Secretary of Defense not to share sensitive information with their spouse or other personal connections, whether via Signal or in-person meetings, it inevitably lessens their willingness to share sensitive information with us. That makes us less safe.
Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson tells CNN that Jennifer Hegseth is a, quote, incredibly accomplished woman and leader. Wilson also said of her that she is a trusted advisor to her husband and an advocate for military families. Aaron?
All right, Brian, thank you very much. And with me now, journalist Gretchen Carlson. Jennifer Hegseth was one of her producers when she was an anchor at Fox News. She also worked with Pete Hegseth. She is also the co-founder of Lift Our Voices. Also here, former Democratic Congressman Max Rose. He was a senior advisor to former Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. And also, Max, of course, you served in Afghanistan. So Gretchen, just trying to understand this a little bit such that you can explain, why do you think Secretary Hegseth is keeping his wife so close and so intimately involved in obviously very serious things? I mean, this is not even talking about the classified strike details, but those of what's going on at the Pentagon.
Well, keep in mind that he said during his confirmation hearings that he was a changed man because of 2 things, Jenny and Jesus. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say that from a Christian perspective, his behavior has not lived up to what most Christians would believe is the right thing to do, which is to take accountability, to ask for forgiveness, to say that you've made mistakes and move on. By the way, this story would have been over if he would have just owned it from the beginning. But I think what's really also important here is that you have to understand the inside of Fox News, where, first of all, she was probably one of his producers from time to time when he filled in on the week show of Fox and Friends. He was on the weekends. And producers are your trusted advisors. But there's also a dynamic at Fox News with the idea that the world's out against you, right? That there's sort of this belief that everyone is there to get you. And so I think that we're seeing that play out now in the way in which he's deflecting things that people say he's doing wrong, and he's going just into his isolated chamber with his wife.
And Max, let me ask you about that. Okay, so these group chats, and as Gretchen said, he owned the first one, right, where Jeffrey Goldberg is, I don't know what word even now to use, is added. Let's just say added. I won't put an adjective on it into the group. But this other group with his brother and his wife and his lawyer and 10 other people, can you think of a single good reason? Again, you worked at the Defense Department under Austin. Can you think of a single good reason for such a group chat to exist where Houthi strike plans, the same ones that we all saw published, would be put?
Of course not. I mean, it's ludicrous. Look, signal chats are very common in politics and all the rest, so they may be used to that form of communication, but it is incredibly rare to see something like this happen, but it's also not isolated, right? This is a long narrative, a long story here of Pete Hegseth's utter incompetence and utter disregard for the way national defense is supposed to be executed. You know, from his first nomination, leading organizations like VoteVets came out and said, this is really, really dangerous. Okay, if you want to play politics, do it with another cabinet secretary.
The reason we're getting all of this dirt. Like, I'm not trying to downplay the Hegseth Trump leaking information that could get soldiers killed type scandal. It's bad. But like scandals like this, sometimes they disappear off the radar, right? Like, I know it's crazy. I know you're probably thinking, Krista, how could that happen? Why? Well, because people protect their own. And when there are big scandals like this, there's often a circle the wagons moment where you circle the wagons, you protect the big dogs at the top, and the big dog would be Hegseth from further scandals to try to save his job, to try to save the institution, all of those sorts of things. But we have to understand that people don't like him and respect him. People do not respect Pete Hegseth. They don't. They don't respect him because of his qualifications. They don't respect him because of his temperament. They don't respect him because of this particular scandal, which includes not only sharing classified information in the wrong way with other top officials, but they accidentally brought the journalist in, but now with his wife. They don't respect that. And they also don't respect the allegations that he has issues with beverages. Again, I don't have any proof of that. I don't think anybody has definitive proof of that. But this was the man that said he would stop drinking if he got the job type thing. And I think a lot of people had worries about that. And so what this demonstrates is that all of these dribs and drabs are a sign of a man that doesn't have respect. If he had one, iron-fisted control over the Pentagon as a SecDef might have if they're competent, and two, the respect of people beneath him, these leaks wouldn't be happening. But somebody wants him gone, and they are letting out just a little bit of scandal every day to make that happen.